Hey guys, Akila Thompkins-Robinson here of the Girl Get Visible channel, and I wanted to do a really quick video to talk to you about creating show notes for your podcast that show up in search, get downloads, and overall are really great for SEO. So I was working on some things, and I know a lot of people have problems with this, and that they've been creating episodes. I see this a lot, especially in Clubhouse. Now I'm in Clubhouse, right? A lot of the podcast groups, I get people who are like, I've only got 1,000 downloads or 100 downloads or some really low download number, but they've got all of these episodes, like tons and tons of episodes, or they've been podcasting for a while and they're just not getting the downloads and not getting the traction. And so I figure, I know this is happening not to just the people I talk to on Clubhouse, but to a lot of people, that they are out there creating these episodes and just aren't getting found, just aren't getting any traction. So I wanted to share with you what I've been doing to really get the amount of downloads that I've been getting to my site. And one of the main ways I've been doing that, you guys know I teach SEO because that's what I talk about a lot here. But one of the ways I've been doing that, and one of the ways that my SEO works, is having show notes. Show notes make all the difference of whether or not your show is going to get found after you've had the show. So like after it's all over, after it's all said and done, if you're like, am I going to get found? Those show notes are the things that really make a difference. So I wanted to talk to you guys about them and tell you a little bit about what I've done. So for those who don't know my show, Girl Get Visible podcast, it is my podcast. If you go there now, like as of earlier this week, because we put out an episode, right? Earlier this week, we only have like 76, 77 episodes. And people are always surprised when I tell them that we've got over 100,000 downloads. If you've been following for a bit, and I haven't put this video up yet, but I will be putting it on the channel soon. We reached 100,000 downloads in July. And since then, so since July to now, we've already gotten another 20,000 downloads. And I've had some breaks. I'm just getting to weekly, like in 2021, but I'm not a weekly show podcaster. I probably had at least about maybe 10, 15 episodes between, that got to this 20K. So I produce episodes, but I don't produce them all the time. And so when I tell people the low number of episodes, but the high number of downloads, I always get that question of, well, what are you doing? How are you getting it done? So I wanted to break down my show notes formula, which is like my little framework for making sure that I get the best podcast show notes that I know are going to bring in traffic, bring in people, get me those downloads, and be really good for SEO, because it's all rooted in being able to get found in the search engine. So first part of the framework, and I got some notes here. First part of the framework is to make sure that you have good topics. Your topics are key. So I will say that, yes, you want to write it out, but you want to make sure you're talking about the things that people are searching for. So the first part of my framework is to make sure that you have a really good searchable topics. And it's really like questions people are asking, like I'm doing one right now, that's really talking about the things that people are generally going into the search engine box and putting in. So making sure you got some really good topics, right? Then, and even if you have guests, make sure your guests fit the topics that people are searching for. Don't just get a guest because they're available or because they raise their hand and say they'll be on your show. Be specific about who you are looking for and what you want them to come onto your show to talk about, so that way they will fit what's going to get you found, right? Then the second part of the framework is the keywords. Keywords, just like the topic, are really important. Once you know your topics, you can go in there and find some really good keywords, and I've got some resources for that. So if you have questions, just ask me in the comments. But getting the right keywords, and the keywords, for those who don't know what keywords are the actual whatever somebody's putting in. So like today, you might have put in how to get more downloads to my show, and that would be a keyword. If you said how to get more downloads to my show or how to get more downloads to my podcast, those would be considered keywords. It's a phrase that you use to search for it. So I need to make sure in my show notes I'm using those words. So that's how I'm going to wind up coming up for it, right? The next thing, so now that's the things that are outside of the show notes, the actual written parts of the show notes. The next part, now that you've got the good topics and you've got the keywords, the next part of the framework is really the inside. So first thing I do And I make sure all of my show notes start with a pretty good meaty intro. And I don't just say, today on the episode, we talked about blah, 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 blah. I make sure that I also say what the episode's about, why it's going to be needed and helpful for the people that why it's going to be needed and helpful for the people that are going to be listening to it. So if I'm talking to you guys as podcasters, I'm going to say, podcasters need to know this so they can get downloads. Pretty much I'm doing a lot of this in what I'm doing right now in this video, right? So just like I would have done the same thing in the show notes. So I'm going to tell them, who needs it, what's it need, what do they need it for, what happens if they don't do this. So like people who don't do this don't get downloads. If I got a stat or a story to go with it, I'm going to throw that in there too, to this whole to my show notes, so that way it's part of what's going to get found. All of this is extra content that people can now search based on. If I say who it's about, now when you say how to do show notes for podcasts or podcasters, you automatically know it's for you because that's what's going to come up. So that's the reason why we put a little bit of extra there in that introduction. The next part, which is one of my favorite parts, is the what you will learn from this. I usually phrase my what you will learn from this as questions. I'll do like bullet points. You'll learn You'll learn how to create show notes. You'll learn what's the right framework. You'll learn how to do an intro. So I'll put all of those because a lot of times when people are searching, they search based on questions, right? A lot of times we go in there, we don't just say show note downloads, you know what I mean? Or podcast downloads. We say, how do I get more downloads? Or how do I do these certain things? Or what is this certain thing? So when you put them in your show notes and phrase them as questions, my alarm's going off. When you put them in your show notes and phrase them as questions, then you are also going to get the advantage of coming up in search when people put in those same exact questions. So in that little what will they learn section, I make sure I phrase all my what you will learn as questions. And then the last part of my show notes that I make sure in everything that I do, when I summarize it, if I'm having a guest, yes, I put their bio in there too. But when I'm summarizing it, I make sure that there's some call to action to tell them to watch another video, to do another thing, maybe to download something. So I make sure, in addition to having my intro and telling them what they're going to learn, I'm going to ask them to do something that is going to help them continue to be part of my show, part of the things that I'm doing. So these are literally the formula that we use for all of my show notes and what I do for all of them so that, you guys are able to have really good show notes and get the downloads that you're looking for. Now, one thing I know you're probably thinking, people ask me all the time, but what about transcripts? I've been told I can just do transcripts and that's all I need for my show notes. Or even worse, they've been told they don't really need show notes at all. Hopefully I've already dispelled that myth. We know you need show notes, right? Because show notes are literally how people are going to continue to find your episodes when you're not promoting them all the time, right? But the transcripts, the reason why I don't like using the transcripts, because transcripts don't have this very targeted information that is going to get you found. So I'm going to say, no, you should not use your transcripts as your show notes. You can have them on the side for ADA purposes, but do not think they're going to replace your show notes. Because in transcripts, those questions I just talked about, people don't usually phrase things that way. Usually transcripts are much longer than a couple of hundred words, which is probably the good length for your show notes. So using your transcripts aren't really going to help you as much as you think they are. They're really just going to be more content out there, but not necessarily the right content that is going to get found. So that is the formula. You guys got the formula. You guys know why you should be using it. Definitely don't depend on your transcripts. And if you want to learn more about this or have some help doing this, I've got a really good software. It's called My SEO Writer. So I'll put the link in the comments, of course. But you guys can head over there and sign up for an account and see how it will actually help you write your show notes. So the next time you're like, what should I put where? What should I put there? It asks you a couple of questions. You type it all in, and then it plops out show notes that then you can copy and paste right onto your thing. So for me, it makes it super helpful, super easy to get them done. You can even turn this over to someone on your team and say, here, listen to the episode, answer the questions. Boom, there are your show notes. So head on over to My SEO Writer, learn all about it over at the site and sign up and get your show notes out there and done so you can start getting those downloads. All right, bye guys. I will talk to you in my next video. Bye guys.